Hey, everybody. Welcome to Module 4. This is your lesson for this week. We're in our third week of poetry writing, and this is the week where we look at poetic forms. So, when we think about poetry, a lot of the time, this might be one of the first things we think of. We think of probably very first, we think rhyme, and then in the second thing we think about poetry is form, like the sonnet, for example, or the haiku that we all wrote when we were, just little kids. The first thing we wrote when our elementary teachers taught us the forms of poetry. So um, you may have already picked up from me that I don't focus overly heavily on rhyme or form because I think it's overemphasized in the earlier years of education. So I focus a little less on those things, but this is the week where we give poetry forms, we pay them their due. We give them our attention for a little bit because they are something that we have to be conscious of when we're learning an overview of creative writing. Okay. So, some forms, well, let me say it this way. Your text uh, was written by someone who is primarily a poet. He's a great creative writer all the way across the board, but he is primarily a poet. And so in the poetry section, he dives very deeply, relatively deeply, into each of the poetic forms. And so you can really learn a lot. And if this is an area that you're very interested in, go for it. Dig deep, get out your text, get out your highlighter, get in there and learn about all the different forms. You will have a reading quiz. It's an easy reading quiz, it's not hard. You will have a reading quiz on the forms. And these are the forms I want you to be familiar with for the reading quiz, okay? The sonnet, the villanelle, the rondo, the sestina, cinquain, cantome, guzzle, and dramatic monologue, okay? Those are the ones I want you to focus on because you can, like I said, this text goes really deeply into the forms, and there are so many there. Um, so focus on these in order to be ready for your reading quiz. Now, when I teach form in poetry, I don't teach a whole bunch. I just teach one, and then I have you try that one form. I want us all to try this one form together and see what we come up with. Okay, so the one we're going to try this week is called the guzzle. Now, I'm going to have to work really hard not to be saying gazelle because that's what I see when I read that word. But guzzle sounds like guzzle. So it sounds this poem form sounds like what we do when we're really thirsty. Okay? That's the first fun thing about it. Now, I want you to go and listen to a couple of guzzle poems first before we start to talk about them. So pause the video, hop back out of it, and go to the links below the video. There's links there to two different poems. Both are guzzles. Both have the author reading them as an option. So I want you to read them with your eyes, but I also want you to listen to the author reading each of those poems. Go do that now and then come back. All right. Now, if you went away and listened to those poems and came back, I'm curious, what did you notice? You probably noticed some similarities between those poems. You probably noticed some things about their form. There are some very specific characteristics that both of those poems have that probably, even on the first reading, you saw them right away. And those have to do with the prescribed form of the guzzle overall. So let's talk about that form. Here are the characteristics. First of all, the guzzle is a popular non-Western form derived from Persian and Urdu sources. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to focus on it, because I think by the time you get here, you've probably explored more Western forms like a sonnet or like just the various types of meter and rhyme that are common to the English language. So this one is a non-Western form with a Persian or Urdu source that has a little bit of a different feel to it. And when these are written in English, though, as we often do when we write in English, we break at least one of the rules of the form. So that's something that's very common, and it actually makes the form a little bit more accessible for the rules of our language. So keep that in mind as I go over these rules. Now, whoops, let me get my headphone back in. All right, here we go. Here are the rules. There are, in a guzzle, there are 5 to 12 loosely related but self-contained couplets. A couplet is a two-line stanza, okay? They are approximately the same length. So in that couplet, that two-line stanza, those two lines are about the same length, okay? They have a ghazal will have a melancholy subject. It is not generally an upbeat, cheerful, happy poem. It's usually got at least a little bit of a melancholy bent to it. The topic quite often will be the hopelessness of an unsatisfied romantic attachment, because if we're talking about melancholy, that's usually what we're talking about, right? Now, when you read those poems, you probably noticed there was some repetition of some words. In a ghazal will repeat the final word or words of the second line at the end of all the second lines. So this is the part that I think is so fun and teaches us the power of words and how one word can be so many different things and it can be used in so many different ways. And it's all in how we imagine it. I think this is my favorite part of the ghazal overall. This is the final characteristic too is another really fun part of the ghazal, and that is that poets often find a way to include their own names in the final line as a sort of signature. So that's something I want you all to try to do too when we write our ghazal this week. It's really fun. All right, here's an example from your text, and this one is called The Empty Belly Ghazal from Chris Yost. I am pacing through the kitchen, all these fancy pans, all this hunger. I read the promises in cookbooks, stacked like catalogs of hunger. Recipe like alchemy, you stir, and the heat only feeds my hunger. My beloved, you make this dust rise into bread with your hunger. Without your fire, no food, only ingredients and hunger. Forgive me. Cookies in hand, I confuse craving with hunger. I will wait for you, my maitre d'. Table for Chris. Until then, hunger. So you can hear that there's a melancholy subject. The word hunger implies it all the way throughout the poem. I want to make one little side note. Where is it? The stanza that says only ingredients and hunger. Funny story. My teenagers have gotten after me a lot about the fact that we're an ingredients household. If you're a parent, you may have heard that from your kids. If you're a parent who likes to cook, why do we have so many ingredients and no food? Anyway, I digress. That story is not the same tone as this poem. Funny story, melancholy poem. Anyway, let's stay on point here. Let's notice what we can about the characteristics of a ghazal by looking at this one. How many stanzas are there? 7. So remember, a ghazal will have between 5 and 12 stanzas. Melancholy subject. There's a difficult romantic attachment here. The imagery throughout is the imagery of the kitchen and hunger and food, and that's where we see that difficulty and that longing. Hunger is our word that's repeated at the end of every second line of every stanza. And then we see Table for Chris. There's the name of the poet in the last line. Now, this week, you're going to have a turn as usual. And I want you to just click next below because you're going to try your own hand at writing a ghazal. Don't be scared. I'm going to walk you through some brainstorming ideas that I think will help you not feel intimidated too much by it and I've got kind of a fun topic for you too. So hopefully this is one that you're going to enjoy.